Hey everybody, welcome to a new chapter of Old Man Brad. If this is your first time in, thank you so much for giving me a listen. This is a podcast I talk horror movies on Tubi, talk to filmmakers, and all that great stuff. Thank you again for giving me a listen. And if you are returning for another episode, I love having you back. So this week I have another great interview for you. I am talking to Michael Kuciak, the writer and director of Death Metal, which you can stream on Tubi right now. Before we dive into that, especially if you're new here, subscribe to the show so you never miss any episodes of Old Man Brad or the series I do over here, Tales from Tubi. And drop me a review over on your favorite podcast app, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, whatever it is. Let me know what you think of the show. All right, let's dive into all things death metal.
What band are you guys?
Abbas Sinister.
Didn't you guys break up recently?
This is your band. It's your baby. But after that disaster of a tour,
It's the reviews, man. Yeah. I mean, they're brutal.
Flat, uninspired songwriting.
I'm going into the studio with you guys or without you. It is your call.
what are we recording, guys?
So have you guys ever heard of the Devil's Concerto? You know, I heard this legend about this French composer. She burned so much to have her music be heard that she reached out to the darkness.
She made a deal with the devil?
And they try to burn every single copy of what would be known today as the Devil's Concerto. That is but one. This is some of the most evil music ever written. I've already got 10 songs, all demoed out, all incorporated with the concerto.
This has potential to be classic, but the concerto...
Death Metal is a horror film about a metal band that, while recording their new album, inadvertently write a song so evil that any who hear it fall under a deadly curse. Like I said, this is written and directed by Michael Kuciak. We are going to dive into that interview with him very shortly. I'm not going to really dive too much into the film because he gives a lot of great behind-the-scenes stories of the film, of the making of the film, and a lot of great stuff about the film. So I'm going to kind of let him take it over. I'm not going to give too much. I did enjoy it. Some of my favorite stuff is it had practical effects, which are always a plus for me in horror movies. There are a couple scenes in the film that were pretty great. There's an eyeball scene that was pretty awesome that I loved. And I did enjoy my time watching Death Metal and would recommend checking it out. It's a fun little indie horror film that you can add to your watch lists right now. Enough of my ramblings. Let's move on over to the interview, and I will talk to you on the other side. I am here getting ready to chat with Michael Kuciak, the writer and director of Death Metal. How you doing today, Michael?
I am fantastic. I'm filled with the joy of life.
That is a wonderful thing to be full of. Let me tell you.
My cup runneth over.
That's great. So let me ask you, Death Metal, speaking of full of life, I don't think the characters in Death Metal may not be quite as full of life as you are right now.
No, we murder the fuck out of them.
So where did the idea for Death Metal come from?
It's kind of a melange of a couple of sources of inspiration. The first one being, I used to play bass in punk rock and metal bands back in Chicago, and one time, one of my pop punk bands, we were cutting a demo in this really old brick building. This building that survived like the Chicago fire. It was like really dark and creepy and weird, and so it was built out to be a recording studio, but when I wasn't actually laying down tracks, I'd like wander around the place, and it was so creepy that I thought, wouldn't it be cool if this place was haunted? And the idea of the haunted recording studio just kind of stuck in my head, and I threw that into the mental filing cabinet, and then we cut forward a couple of decades later, and One of my producing partners on this project, a guy named Ian Holt, ran into a dude named Dan Gutschmidt, who is a composer and filmmaker in Northeast Ohio, and brought up the idea that, like, at the time I was looking to I directed several shorts and music videos, and I was looking to do my first feature. And Ian brought up to Dan that I was looking to do a feature, and Dan said, and if he doesn't mind coming out here, I have a couple of locations. I have a farm and I have a recording studio. And so it was just like, okay. So I flew out, I took a look at the places, and I'm like, okay, I could tell a story here. And so I dug up the old idea of the haunted recording studio. And thing being, though, is I wanted it to be not just about recording, but about death metal specifically.
Okay.
So, if we're going to call a movie death metal, the threat has to come from the death metal, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So
yes,
it's like,
absolutely.
it has to be specific to the genre. So it's like, all right, well, what if it's an evil song? And they dig up, and I sometimes get accused of ripping off Deathgasm, a film that I've actually never seen. I'm not ripping off Deathgasm because I'm actually ripping off another movie, which is called Paganini Horror.
I was going to ask you about that. It's one of my favorite
Yes.
Italian horror films.
Holy cow! You're the first person I've run into who's even heard of the movie.
When I started
like
watching it, that's the first thing that popped in my head was Paganini Horror.
Really? Okay,
Yes.
because I'm a big fan of Daria Nicolodi, and this was one of the first films that she did after she split up with Dario Argento, and I've always liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like the wonderful thing about being a nerd for Italian horror cinema or any other kind of like relatively quote unquote obscure types of cinema is you can like lift more liberally in terms of your influences without anybody being like, what? That's just like Scream, you know? But
yeah.
Anyway, so I've actually never seen Deathgasm, but which apparently is similar. They find like a haunted song and they play it and people get fucked up. But in this case, I'm ripping off. I'm not ripping off. I'm cinematically influenced by Paganini Horror as a core idea, and I've smushed it together with, this old idea of the haunted recording studio, and that's kind of death metal.
Okay. Yeah, because that was going to be one of my questions was how did you work to kind of set this apart from that? But you haven't seen Deathgasm, and more
I never have.
More recently, I mean, we got Studio 666 with the Foo Fighters, kind of the similar type of thing, and then Paganini Horror I was going to bring up, and I know most people don't even know what that movie is.
Well, I mean, here's the thing: is like I never set out to. There is this entire sub genre of horror, which is the heavy metal horror movie. I never set out for my first feature to be part of this sub genre, but plugging into a clear paradigm gives it a pitch. It's like right off the bat, like what the movie is. The idea is, though, that 100% of heavy metal horror movies are horror comedies. They always lean into camp. They always lean into laughs.
Yes.
They're, XYZ. And the idea with death metal to set it apart somewhat is to, at some point in time, shift into gear and be serious. Tonally, the primary influence is the original Evil Dead. And by that, I mean that it's lighthearted in Act 1 as we're getting to know the characters. And then when the curse really kind of drops the hammer, that now the movie is actively trying to scare you. And so with that in mind, it's in terms of tonal structure, it's OG Evil Dead and the original Blair Witch, if that makes sense.
Yes,
so it's like
absolutely does.
So the characters, we like them. They're goofing around. We have some laugh beats, XYZ. And then when the curse comes into play, then now we're in a horror movie with capital H. So there's still like a couple of lighter beats along the way, just to kind of give a little bit more of an emotional palette, but it's not a horror comedy. At least it's not.
That's not how you market it as. Like, I feel like the character who played the studio head,
Fleming, played by the amazing E. Ray Goodwin.
He kind of felt like more of that little bit of that comic relief that kind of like threw some jokes here and there with his water bottle he was walking around with, and just like the comments he would make. kind of lighten the mood, and then you throw stuff at him.
Yeah, I mean, for one thing, the character, E-Ray is a big personality. When he came into the the audition, like he had an axe over his shoulder, I'm just like, dude, this guy's got it. It's his to lose. What the fuck? All you have to do now is not suck. And then he's like, and then he was amazing. So, but yeah, I mean that character is consistently a favorite of people who, I get two main compliments on this film. The first being casting. I found an amazing set of actors when I went to Ohio. I had no idea. I'd never been to the state of Ohio. I basically got off the plane. I'm like, Ohio, show me what you got. And it turned out that Ohio had a lot.
It worked out for you.
Fantastic. And the other big compliment is the practical effects, because again, aiming for OG Evil Dead, aiming for OG Evil Dead with a heavy frosting of Fulci. And with either of those influences, we're talking about practical effects. So
yes.
It's like it's latex, dripping blood, the entire thing. When I was doing the casting, it's like, like Caitlin Newberry came in and she blew me away. And I was just like, hey, listen, if you get this role, just understand that I'm going to take you to a farm in the middle of nowhere and dump like fake blood in your head. And she was like, awesome, let's do it. I'm like, okay. Great. Yes.
And that is one of the things I really did enjoy about it. Is I always love this resurgence, so to speak, of the practical work. Like, we went through a long time where everybody was CG everything, like, but now it's coming back around to this heavy practical effects. What really made me, and I'm sure you, like, just a lover of horror movies. And where I'm not going to spoil anything for any kills, but there are a couple in it that I'm just like, oh, this is cool. The way that, you did XYZ. I don't want to say it because I want people to go watch this movie, but
well, I'll spoil my own movie. The eyeball sequence is
that is one
directly
for sure.
Fulci influenced. And in fact, my amazing effects team, led by David Greathouse, but also Becky Ingram and Joe Gall, who also plays Ramsey. When he wasn't acting, he was working on the effects, the gags. Between the three of them, it was like we had the conversation early on. It's like, what are you looking for, in terms of, OG Evil Dead, but like this gag, I'm really looking for classic Fulci. Like it doesn't, we're not even leaning into something that should feel real. Like we know we're watching a movie. It should feel like we're watching a scene out of like a midnight movie, and and the audience is going nuts. Like, what the fuck am I looking at? So that's the idea. I've watched 100 million horror movies, and how many different permutations of watching people get stabbed or axed or like bitten by a monster or an animal. You want to give the audience something that they haven't seen before, because if they haven't seen it before, then they don't know what's going to happen next, and it's just like, I should get stabbed in the face, whatever. No, it's like, what is happening to this guy? So it's like, the same thing with Anya and her, her transformation and, just all the fun stuff. So
I want to ask you, this is your first full-length feature film. How was
as
that
a director? Yeah.
As a director, how is that conversion, like moving from the short film world over to I'm directing a full-blown feature?
Mostly in terms of exhaustion. It's
okay.
It's a sprint. The common analogy is a sprint versus the marathon, and yeah, dude, it's like when you're shooting shorts, like I have made like several shorts that are like 1 minute horror movies. So it's like shoot them one day, cut them the next. Throw them up on YouTube on day 3 and we're done. In and out, boom, no one gets hurt. With the feature, the entire pre-production sequence is months of work. And by work, I mean 18 hours a day work. You're doing that for months. And then you actually, at long last, you get everyone together and you actually shoot the movie. And then that's its own war to fight. And then post-production, especially like his post-production was fucking trench warfare over the course of years, man. But it's like, that one was like, that's the test of endurance. And it's like, especially with production, I was as exhausted as I'd ever been in my life. As in like literally like asleep before my head hits the pillow, kind of days.
Okay.
And I was in agony because I dropped a motorcycle on myself a few years ago, and I still have like a lingering injury over that. And if I don't prepare myself for it, like I'm just like walking around just gritting my teeth, being like, fucking, and like everyone got sick on set. Super, like we're shooting until like 5 a.m, kind of stuff. And but yeah, here's the thing, man. It's like if you get together like the right team who are just like, fuck it, we're making a horror movie. This is what making a scrappy independent horror movie is. We're not talking about trailers and catering. It's we're getting up to our elbows with this thing.
Yeah.
This is where the rubber hits the road. So it's like you go into that experience knowing what you're gonna do.
How long did it take for Death Metal to kind of, from production, filming to editing to, hey, it's finally out in the world?
I wrote it in 16 and early 17. I shot it. First day of principal photography was June 1st, 2017. And that was, yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so that was the original nut of production was 13 days, I want to say. And then I came back to Ohio twice to shoot pickups. And then throughout then, even like into 18, I was shooting more stuff. Like I would cut something together, realize I needed something. And wonderfully, my DP, James Pizarro, was very invested in the film. And so I would, call him up and be like, listen, man, I need some shot of trees. Could you just grab the camera and like run into like a park or something and just grab some shots of trees? Yeah, sure. Okay. Hey man, I need a cleaner shot of the Agora sign outside. Can you just run up to the Agora and just grab the sign? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No problem at all. So it's like, in that whole process, like, a year and change. So we're going into like 2018. And here is kind of one of the stories of Death Metal is
I love stories. So
yeah. Okay. All right. So the story of the making of Death Metal is, all of that work, time, money, effort to just get it into the can. So I was running out of money is what it was, because I dumped like every penny that I had into this movie. And I'm just like, and I thought, well, I'll only be at risk for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
Because I'll finish it and put it into the world, and the money will come back this way and it'll be fine. So I was willing to kind of like shove out into the, a financial rowboat in the middle of the ocean, because I thought, well, this is just going to be for a little bit. So I cut together a version of the movie and I rushed it. I was drunk and exhausted, and I slapped together a version of it in a hotel room in Macedonia, Ohio. I ran it through the post-production steps, audio mixing and effects and QC and the entire thing. And at the end of the day, I dropped every penny that I had into, at long last, I had a releasable film in my hand. And then I watched it. And I showed it to my friends. I showed it to my producing partners, and everyone's just like, dude, this is, no. It's, it's long and it's tall is what it is.
Okay.
And the reason for that being, for one thing, I didn't take the time that you need to kind of refine the cut. And for another thing, I still had production to firmly in my mind. I hadn't 100% taken off my director hat and put on my editor hat. So I had a lot of scenes and stuff in there that we had worked really hard to shoot, but just didn't really cut together. But I was putting them in there anyways, because I'm like, oh, Johnny Yurko worked so hard to get that shot. How can we not put it in?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So at the end of the day, I had in my hand a movie that could release, but it wouldn't have been good, and it would have strangled my directing career in the cradle right then and there. So one of the toughest decisions of my life. It's like, all right, well, if I don't put it out, what comes next? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like it's just a big. All I know is a negative, which is I'm not putting out a flawed version of this movie. Not to say that the version in hand is perfect, but it is light years beyond where it used to be. So from 19 and 20, I spent trying to find the money to redo post-production. And during that entire time, I kept recutting the film, recutting it. Along the way, one of my other business partners, Michael Alden, he connected me with Perry Loop Productions. Perry Loop had helped him finance like a socially driven issue documentaries. He's like, Cooch, Perry Loop is interested in coming in and financing the post-production of death metal. I'm like, well, that's great. Fantastic. Excellent news. Not to look a gift horse, though. Why is this company that usually does documentaries about like sick children interested in my gonzo midnight death metal horror movie? The woman who runs it, she had a son named Adam Bratcher, who was in a death metal band. And he passed away at a very young age. And she said, I will finance, the post-production if you put in his music as a legacy to my son. And also like kind of mention him as like kind of an in memoriam at the end of the film. I said, yeah, I mean, Soul to the American. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So she also insisted that I go through Rich McCarr and his Studio Buttons in Manhattan. So I spent, and weirdly enough, in the meanwhile, this had been taking so long that we pulled together a completely other movie, From the Shadows, shot that. We were in post-production. Like we wrapped production on From the Shadows. And then I went from New Jersey production on From the Shadows to Manhattan working post-production on death metal. So it was 3 months of, again, like super intense studio work. And then even then I had to run away at the last minute because I thought I was going to go make a movie called Cursed in Canada. That movie fell apart at the last minute. But long story short, we have a movie that's at long last releasable that I'm proud of, that I think is good. And then we connected with Bayview. They released it on May 30th of this year. So that is the soup to nuts, cradle to grave story of death metal.
You can stream it on Tubi right now. That's where I got to watch it at.
It was released originally on Blu-ray physically.
So physical first, and then you went to streaming.
Yeah, Bayview has like a Blu-ray production situation or something like that. Like they use the release of Blu-ray basically as like a news item, and they also sent me a big box of them. And so what I did was I just started signing copies and just like, as a promotion, I'm like, watch the movie, watch it. I made a movie, watch it now. So we did a release party screening type thing at a metal bar called Knucklehead right here in Hollywood. Because, it's not a normal horror movie. It's a death metal horror movie. Yeah. So I've been trying to show it at like venues instead of theaters. It was Blu-ray first, and then it was VOD on Amazon. And it's also VOD now on Vudu. But then it went to Tubi, and I was super, super pleased with that because Tubi is kind of where death metal is like that. That's where its audience is. It's like, we're finding like the scrappy, it's like the new venue for like scrappy independent horror movies. It's just watch it. It's
I mean, their catalog of horror movies just in general is massive. It's like going to I've said this multiple times. It's like those Friday nights when I got to go to the video store and just like walk around and see what's out. That's what TV is to me now. I sit at in my home and I do that same thing.
Yeah, dude. So it's like I was deeply pleased because there's no barrier between the viewer and the film. And it's just like, as soon as it came on Tubi, I could immediately just start bombing out links to everybody on the internet. Just be like, I made a movie, watch it. Here's the link. That's how I'm hopefully going to see return from my investors. Bayview was also informed me that we've been picked up by Screambox as well.
Okay.
And Screambox will, they will premiere it when they decide to premiere it. And Screambox also feels like exactly where death metal wants to be, like in terms of like, where Screambox resides in the industry and the sensibility. Like, it's like, it's not lost on me that like Terrifier 2, premiered on streaming on Screambox.
Yep.
It's like, that's what we're looking for. These kind of Evil Dead-y Italian horror movie-ish, holy fuck, his eyeballs coming out of his head kind of movies, we're not A24 over here.
Well, you had death metal come out this year, but you mentioned it. You are a writer and a producer on another film that also came out this year, From the Shadows.
It's been a busy year.
It's been a wild year for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the gods of, Lemmy smiled down upon me and gave me many blessings. But after like the, trench warfare of 19 and 20, 21 and 22, like we started like getting things moving forward. And then, of course, this year we had both death metal and From the Shadows release. From the Shadows, we shot that one in New Jersey on the campus of Fairleigh Dickinson in the Teaneck area. And again, just as like with death metal, I just showed up to Ohio and was like, Ohio, what do you got? Like, same deal. I'd never been to New Jersey in my life, but I landed and I was like, all right, New Jersey, show me what you got. And they were great. Everyone was amazing. But yeah, it was funny. That one came about because I was working on another project called Knife that we were looking to shoot, and COVID came along.
Mm-hmm.
At first, like, we kept pushing and pushing and pushing, like, as deep into COVID as like, March, April of 20, like I was working on day out of days and budgets and everything else. Like we had a location scout, like it really looked like we're going to make it. COVID kept kind of dragging along, and finally financing was just like, let's just wait. And, let's take a beat. Once this blows over, then we'll kind of regroup. And that was deeply frustrating.
I'm sure.
I was so close to getting Knife made that I had the taste of it in my mouth. It's just like, it was like, it's the exact opposite of like running down the stairs on Christmas morning and there's, someone's stolen the presents in the tree. It's like standing there in my footy PJs going, where's my fucking horror movie? So, especially after like, everything with death metal,
mm-hmm.
It's like, I was looking to get like another movie. Let's just make shit, man. Let's just make it. I thought, all right, well, what can we get made now during COVID? I saw Host. Have you ever seen Host?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I saw Host. I'm just like, I'll write one of those.
Okay.
They shot it during COVID. I want to shoot something during COVID. I'll write something that can be shot during COVID. I looked at Host and I'm like, all right, well, let's write one of those. And I thought, I'm like, all right, well, I can't do demons because that's what they're doing there.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do ghosts because that's just unfriended, right? So I thought, all right, well, what if there was a slasher version of it? Like some dude, like they're all on a call and some dude is popping up behind them and stabbing them. And all right, well, why don't, and then what you do is I just took that basic premise of we have these people on a Zoom call and some dude is showing up and stabbing them to death. And then you start walking backwards with your dramatic questions. It's like, all right, well, why don't they get up? Why are they on the call in the first place? Why don't they just get up and leave? How is this guy finding them? Why is he out to get them? And in answering the questions, like you start building out the mythology, because I thought, all right, well, if he's just kind of popping up out of nowhere behind them, he can't just be like a dude. He's not Michael Myers. He's got to be like a supernatural slasher, like Freddy Krueger or Candyman. So, all right, well, what's the nature of his powers? Where does this come from? What if they were members of a cult? What if they survived a cult thing, and they're the last survivors and they're being interviewed. And this guy wants to finish the job, and the cult actually tapped into some mystical force, and he's got it too, and he can use it to find them, and and that's how you start building out the mythology, and then the story, and then the characters, and everything else. So anyway, that's amazingly enough, we were able to pull together From the Shadows. Michael Alden was friends with Keith David's manager, and threw the script past him, and Keith was like, he dug the project, but he didn't want to be just the only name on the marquee. He's like, I'll come on if you get somebody else. So one of our EPs, Sarah Gorski, who also plays reporter in a small scene, she was able to connect it with Bruce Davison. And so we got Bruce, who got Keith, and then we got Selena, and then then we made the movie. So hooray for us. We made two movies. And that one we actually got theatrical.
Okay.
We had 5 theaters, and it was a select theatrical viewing. It's very, very, very rare for an independent horror movie to get any kind of theatrical release these days. Almost everything goes to streaming. So I was ecstatic by the fact that a movie that I wrote was on a physical marquee.
Yeah, that has to be exciting for sure.
I'm like, hooray, I went to film school for a reason. If only my parents were still alive, they could be proud. But it's like, look, we made it. It's right there. It was on Vudu as an exclusive VOD for about a month, and
Okay.
then now it's just streaming like all over the place. I actually just got the streaming links like a few days ago. So interestingly enough, we've been working the festival circuit with both death metal and From the Shadows at the same time. So I've had death metal play some festivals and Shadows play others, and I haven't quite hit the the bifecta of having them both play the same festival yet. But but like a few weeks ago, Sarah Gorski and I went to Kenosha, where Shadows was playing the Port of Fear film festival, and then like the very next week, death metal was playing the Chicago Horror Film Festival, and then like the week after that, Shadows was playing the LA Horror Film Festival, and then So it's like it's just the push to you make these things, and then it's you
now
take
it's the
off
grind.
one hat, you put it. Yeah, you take
The
off one hat,
hustle,
you
as
put
I
on
like
the
to
other
put
one.
it, I guess.
Well, it's never work if you enjoy what you're doing. It's just like it's definitely like it's a job. You have to do it, but it's also like boo-hoo, I made a horror movie and now I have to
Tell people to watch it.
Hey, please watch the movie now.
Now, as we wrap up here, what's on the after? I mean, you had 2 movies drop this year. I mean, what's next for you?
Just this past Monday, I typed the end on the first draft of the next horror project that I intend to direct. So,
okay.
And I don't want to jinx it by going into
Nope,
detail
that's fine.
That,
you can
like it's super early in that process.
Okay, yeah.
But it's like now I'm now writing. Now that I'm at this stage, it's like, all right, am I directing this one or not?
Okay.
It's like, so like that one I wrote with the idea of directing it.
Okay. So you want to get back behind the director's chair and.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm also, I also have another script that I wrote that's kind of a spy thriller, and that's out to financing and talent right now. And that one is not big, it's not Mission Impossible, but it's definitely a step up in terms of weight class financing speaking.
Okay,
so it's like that one, and again, like I don't want to jinx it because it's too early. On that one, I'm quote unquote just a writer. I'm not directing it. I'm not a producer on it. It was optioned, and the producers are looking for financing and talent on it. But so I've got those 2 projects are working, and at the same time, I also have the constellation of projects that I'm always trying to like pull together, and like we're trying to get Knife together again. We got very close on making that movie back in 20, and it's like we got close enough that it's like, all right, well, the idea was let's wait until COVID is blown over, and then we'll take another crack at it. It's like, well, COVID is blown over, let's take another crack. It's between the thing that I'm working on right now and Knife and the spy thriller. Those are kind of like the 3 things that are like the bigger headlines on what's coming next.
Where can people follow along to you so they can keep up with what you have going on?
Well, I always want to push people to deathmetalhorrormovie.com.
Okay.
Because there you can watch, it's got a direct link to Death Metal on Tubi. And also on deathmetalhorrormovie.com, you can buy signed copies of the Death Metal Blu-ray from yours truly. And also you can buy, I still have several boxes full of Abba Sinister t-shirts. So you can buy t-shirts for the doomed band that gets murdered in death metal. I'm shilling that stuff because I'm trying to raise the money to, I'm trying to fix some aspects of the ending credit sequence. I want the ending credit sequence to be like a little bit more of a showcase for the bands that are in it. When we included Adam Bratcher's music, we kind of had to like shove everyone off to like the beginning, first act of the movie. And, it's a little crushed and rushed, in terms of like, Non-Slaughter and Convalescence and, the rest of Embalmer's song. I want to go back in and kind of like recarve out, like, let's give each song like a good solid minute so the audience can like appreciate this great music. So anyways, it's like I'm still trying to raise money for post-production on Death Metal, even after the movie is
even
out.
After it's out.
So it's like, please buy the t-shirts, please buy the Blu-ray so I can like go back in the studio. You can easily find me on X and Instagram. I'm either Mike Kuciak or else my physical production company is Blast Furnace Media. So I think I'm on Instagram as Blast Furnace. But I'm very findable online. I'm very Googleable these days.
Okay. And I'll have links to everything when on the description for the episode, so people can just click and go. So, well, Michael, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and chatting with me, and wish you all the best with death metal and From the Shadows and all the other projects you have lined up.
Thank you very much for having me. Please watch the movie, buy the stuff.
I want to thank Michael again for chatting with me. It was great hearing all these behind the scenes stories that he had about the movie. When I originally watched the film, I didn't know that this film had been in the process of being made for so many years. I honestly had no clue until, we talked. Go follow Michael online. I'll have all the links below, and go check out, if you want any more info or anything on death metal, you want a Blu-ray copy, deathmetalhorrormovie.com. Like I said, I have all those links, and wish nothing but the best for him in his future projects. I look forward to seeing what he releases. All right, before I go, I'll give you 2 movies that you can stream at home right now to check out. First up, my mini review came out earlier this week, Onyx the Fortuitous and the Talisman of Souls. Absolutely love this movie. I think it's hilarious. You should go watch it. Like I said, in that, go pair it with The Knights of Badassdom. I think you'll have a blast. So the other one is called Cruiser. You can stream this on Tubi, and this is a found footage movie. I'm usually not a fan of found footage movies, but this kind of is a bit of a different style to it. This is footage from a police car camera. So there is a killer who takes the identity of a police officer, and he is driving around going after people, basically. And it is actually, it's pretty wild. Like, I'm not going to say pretty wild. It's very wild. And I actually really dug this movie and would highly recommend checking out Cruiser. If you've seen a movie, there's another movie that came out after this one called Spree, which I did not like as much. It was kind of a little bit of the similarities. He was driving around killing people, but he was doing it for like a YouTube channel. This one is supposedly this mystery man did this, and this is the police footage that they found and released as a film. Recommend checking out Cruiser. All right, so that will do it for another chapter of Old Man Brad. Thank you so much for everyone who listens. And like I said, just subscribe to the show so you never miss anything. And drop me a review to let me know what you think of the show. I will be back next week. We are trying to get together to record an episode on Thanksgiving with a few special guests. Hopefully I can get that rolling and have it out to you next week for your holiday listen. So watch for that coming next week. And just remember, snuggle up in that blanket, turn off the lights, because it's okay to be scared. We'll talk to you later, everybody.